Good afternoon, I guess, yes. No, almost.
Yes.
It's 11:59, we're almost in the afternoon. Mr. Picard, would you introduce yourself? Tell us your name and your DOC number.
My name is Christopher William Picard, DOC number 334954.
Right? And counsel, would you introduce yourself for the record?
Yes, ma'am. Jennifer Cameron on behalf of Chris Picard.
Right, thank you. And let me see, you have a friend there, Ms. Bourgeois there at the penitentiary with you. Let me just acknowledge the other folks who have joined us. We have the Parole Project, Mr. Myers, Joseph Landix, Catherine Picard, Josh Jones, Amy Dozier, Teresa Baratini, Jennifer Cameron. Well, she's listed here. And then, of course, Ms. Bourgeois, they had you on two lists. Here in opposition, we have Ms. Shirley Adams, Rachel Pickering, and a representative from the DA's office. So, Mr. Picard, I'll read some identifying information into the record, ask you to confirm it. Then I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Freeman, seated to my far right. Your case has been assigned to him. He'll take the lead on the interview. Then we'll hear from everybody who's indicated they want to speak today. Before we turn it over to your attorney, we'll ask you if you have a statement to make, and she'll close it out for us, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Christopher Picard, as stated, your DOC number is 334954. You're here seeking a commutation of your sentence. You were sentenced in January 1994 in St. Tammany Parish to life for a second-degree murder conviction. Is that
Yes,
information
Yes,
correct?
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Freeman?
Okay, Mr. Picard, how old are you?
I am 50, sir.
Okay, and what's your education?
I obtained my GED in 1997.
Okay, you saying that while you were in prison?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you know, I'm looking at this card. I've read the reports. I want to hear from you what actually happened that night. What happened with you and the victim and your friend? Co-defendant.
Okay, on the day of December 27th, 1991, I was in the company of Harold Brand, and at some point that evening, I don't remember exactly what time, him and I started drinking. And throughout the course of the evening and into the night, I believe we may have went to a bar or two and drank some more. And at some point, we returned to the house I was living in Slidell, and which we brought alcohol there with us as well. And at some point, Miss Shirley Laris joined us, and I guess she was dating Mr. Brand or whatever. I had just got back. I was living in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania for like the last 4 months. And I just came back for Christmas. And so I asked Harold, did he think Shirley would be open to having sex with both of us? And he said he didn't know. So I was like, well, what are you just gonna ask her? And he was like, look, he was about to go into the bedroom with Shirley. He said, just give me a few minutes and just come in there. So Mr. Brand went into the bedroom, and I did that. I gave him several minutes. I don't know exactly how long. And I opened the bedroom door. Well, Miss Laris didn't respond in a way in which I thought she would be open to what I suggested to Mr. Brand. So I closed the bedroom door. A couple minutes after that, Miss Laris came out and she was visibly upset. She didn't say anything to me. She just walked out the door. Well, not long after that, Harold Brand came out as well, and he was upset too. And he made a statement. He said, well, if I had a gun, I'd kill her. Well, I said, you don't need a gun. And we happened to be standing in the kitchen area of my house. So I opened a drawer and gave him a knife. I said, there you go, you don't need a gun. So he took the knife, we went outside, and Miss Laris was sitting in her car in the driveway. And she still seemed upset. So Mr. Brand tried to open the driver's side door and it was locked. So he then said, if she's lucky I can't get in that car. So I said, well, I can get in the car. And I picked a stepping stone up, and I was very intoxicated, but I remember that I didn't want to throw the stone through the driver's side window because I didn't want it to hit Shirley. So I threw it through the back window, the back driver's side window. And by the time I turned around, Harold had reached in through the window, unlocked the door, had opened the door, and was stabbing Miss Laris. And at that point, I feel like I kind of went in shock a little bit. I actually couldn't believe what was happening. And I know that my actions leading up to that point may seem like that don't make sense, but it's true. So I don't know how many times he actually stabbed Miss Laris. But at that point, he pulled her out of the car onto the ground and began striking Miss Laris with the stepping stone. So he then grabbed the stone and thrust it toward me. And he was like, what are you gonna do? And, I was feeling some type of way at that point. So I more or less dropped the stone and intentionally missed her the first time. So he picked the stone up again and thrust it back at me and said, you didn't even hit her. So the second time I dropped the stone, I did hit her. And at that point, we put Miss Laris in the car, we left the scene, and were eventually apprehended shortly thereafter on our way to Mr. Brand's father's residence.
How old were you when you started drinking?
I guess probably early teens, sir.
And have you ever received any treatment for your drinking?
I have in prison. Yes.
What kind have you received in prison?
I've taken substance abuse, living in balance 1 and 2. I have taken AA 12 steps. I'm currently in the Celebrate Recovery program as well.
What would be your sobriety plan if we would consider releasing you? I mean, do you consider yourself alcoholic?
I'll always be an alcoholic, sir. My plan, if I'm given the chance at release, is to go to the parole project, in which I've been told by my attorney that parole project will offer me an avenue to attend AA meetings. And from there, if given the opportunity, I plan to eventually transition to Alabama, where my family lives, And my attorney has done research in the area where they live in Alexander City. And she found a place where they have meetings. It's about an hour away from my mother's home. Now, I told my attorney that I would be willing, more than willing, to drive that hour and back, if that's what it took. Well, she actually asked me if I would be willing to start my own AA program, as years ago, I was once the vice president of Alcoholics Anonymous here in the prison. And I recently graduated a class called Moral Compass. It's a social mentor certification training course. So, Mr. Freeman, if given the chance, if that were the case, I would love to do something like that one day.
You know, your victim was only 17, and it's definitely a horrific crime.
Yes, sir.
The worst I've seen on here. What do you think you did to her family and to others involved?
I know from taking the victims awareness class, I can never know exactly what I put her family through, but I have learned that victims of violent crime suffer tremendously, like they PTSD. You know, I've affected them psychologically, emotionally, physically, financially, even spiritually. You know, and I've asked myself over the years, you know, how would I feel if that were my mother or my sister or my child?
Deep breath.
So I can only imagine what they've been through. I know I've done them great harm.
Breathing.
Do you have any children?
Yes, sir. I have one son.
Do you have contact with your son?
I do not. I've tried to reach out to his mother over the years, to try to reconcile with them, as I know he was a victim in this crime as well. You know, and it's been really hard. I was asked in my victim awareness class to write a letter to my son. And that was really hard for me as well, you know, him not being in my life for all these years. And so I was really writing a letter to a little boy who is now grown, you know, and there's nothing more I would like than to be a part of his life.
And what is your job at the prison?
My job, I work at in which we supply canteen items to the different camps here at Angola, as well as different institutions throughout the state.
And how long have you been in that job?
March of this year will be 15 years.
15 years in the same job.
Yes, sir.
I've seen you've gotten a lot of accommodations from Prison Enterprises. You must be pretty good at what you do. I've seen you taking a ton of classes. Name 1 or 2 classes that you got the most out of.
Well, like I said, my substance abuse and AA programs obviously, the nature of my crime and my drug and alcohol problems then, the programs greatly impacted me and changed my life, as well as the victims awareness class, as I just touched on. You know, it shined a light on a lot of things for me and gave me an even stronger sense of empathy.
I see you're low risk, you're a minimum custody. You've had 17 disciplinary write-ups. You've done great since 2010 until 2018, when you received a 30H. Who did you get that write-up for?
That was for a three-way phone call, Mr. Freeman. I was interviewed to go to the state police barracks in Zachary. And I felt like the interview went pretty well. So a really good friend of mine, Miss Amy Dozier, in fact, who will be speaking on my behalf today, her boyfriend is actually my best friend here in the prison. And we all visit together. We have visited together for years. So me thinking that I was going to be transferred to another institution, I called Miss Dozier to let her know. Well, coincidentally, she happened to be on the phone with my best friend. So she just, as I'm telling her what I have to tell her, she just clicked over, you know, and made it a conference call.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. Have you done any charity work since you've been at the prison? Any extra stuff, any tutoring, anything of that nature?
I have facilitated the 12-step class. I have been a public speaking instructor. I have built over 5,000 toys for underprivileged children. I have volunteered my time to go on outside work details for prison enterprise. I have, for a few years now, during Christmas time, we make Christmas bags for offenders throughout the state. I've also donated canteen items to security at Camp F where I live, as they hold bingo games and such for the elderly prisoners in the camp. I've also helped organize and participated in softball games between security and offenders. I've also recently updated my CPR class certification as well as, sir? Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you said something. I updated my CPR certification. A good friend of mine recently had a heart attack, and I was unable to help him because I didn't know what to do. It had been so long since my previous CPR certification that I had no idea what to do, and I felt helpless. So I felt compelled to go learn basic CPR again in the event that not just him, but anybody else, you know, may need help.
Okay. Last question is, why should I take a chance on it? Tell me, because why should me sitting here today, you know, with the heinous nature of this crime, take a chance on you today?
Well, sir, I am ready to take everything that I have learned in this prison, all of these positive character traits that I have gained over the years, everything that has made me an upstanding member of my community here in the prison. I know I can take out there with me into society and become an upstanding member of my community there as well.
Warden, do you have any comments to make?
Yes, sir. Christopher he came to us, as you stated already, in '94. Made his Class A trustee in 2006, working Main Prison maintenance, doing other things, working the mule barn. And like you said, the last 15 years, he's been working in the CDC warehouse. One thing about the CDC warehouse is that it is canteen items. It's a lot of temptation to grab things, to lose that job. He's worked 15 years there without any issue. So it speaks to his character as far as the job that he's been holding and the work that he's done here.
Thank you, Warden. I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Rushay.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Ricard,
Yes, sir.
good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And this is the day for honesty.
Yes, sir.
I'm reading a portion of the police report.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to read or paraphrase the statement. And I want you to respond to that statement, okay?
Yes, sir.
According to your co-defendant, Mr. Ricard suggested that we kill Miss Larris. By that time, Miss Larris had gone to the car. Mr. Brain stated that Picard threw a brick through the window, the car window. Then we dragged her out and stabbed her. I stabbed her first, then the knife broke. It broke off in her, and then we went inside and we got another knife, and then he stabbed her. Is that accurate?
No, sir. I did not stab Miss Larris, and she was not drugged out of the car and stabbed. She was stabbed while she was inside the car.
Okay. I'm just reading the statement. And I
Okay,
just verify the statement and get your comments on it. Thank you, sir.
you're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Rushay. All right, we'll hear from those who want to speak in support. First, could we hear from Joseph Landon?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
How you doing? My name is Joseph Landix. I am a formerly incarcerated person. I served 25 years as a juvenile offender. I have known Mr. Picard for approximately 15, almost 18 years. Mr. Picard and I developed a great bond while housed in the main prison. Mr. Freeman, you spoke of Mr. Picard's charity. What Mr. Picard did not inform you of is I am a product of his charity. Mr. Picard, with his assistance, helped me to attain my GED within 17 days. The acquisition of my GED would put me on a path that would now position me to speak before you in society. Mr. Picard is one of the most thoughtful, considerate human beings that I have come to know on the face of earth. Yes, this crime is horrible. There's no dispute about it. However, I pray that this board look into Mr. Picard and look into the rehabilitative efforts he has put forth. Mr. Picard, on numerous occasions, has put others before him. Case in point, I arrived at CDC warehouse in 2000, I want to say 13. I worked there for 8 years before I was ultimately released from prison. At the behest of Mr. Picard, I was selected to work at CDC warehouse. The job is not a job where any offender can go in there, because the offenders who are assigned to CDC warehouse are individually responsible for over $250,000 worth of merchandise for the aisle that they are assigned to. I know because I worked there. At the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, 4 offenders from CDC were selected to participate in the national emergency COVID crisis. Unbeknownst to me, I was selected, but I ended up discovering through prison enterprise employees that my selection was more of a default than the actual selection. Mr. Picard was selected. Mr. Picard declined and instead recommended me. When I asked Mr. Picard at the conclusion of the pandemic, when we returned to Camp F after living on our job site for a year and 10 days, I asked Mr. Picard, why did he do that? Mr. Picard said, many people don't want to acknowledge it, but you're a far better worker than a lot of us in the warehouse. You was fit for this. And might I add, at the height of COVID, Mr. Picard himself contracted COVID-19. He dealt with excruciating pain in his recovery from COVID-19. That alone shows the compassion and the unselfishness of Chris Picard to select another offender as opposed to himself to go live on another job site outside of prison with no supervision. With all due respect, Mr. Picard was a social mentor way before he took the Moral Compass mentorship class. He mentored me and several others. A lot of us who have regained our freedom, Mr. Picard was a constructive contributor to our release.
All right, good. Mr. Landis, can you wrap it up for us?
With that being said, I pray that this board take into consideration the accomplishments of Mr. Picard and deem him a worthy candidate for a favorable recommendation. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, I'd like to hear from Ms. Catherine Picard.
Hello, good morning. I just wanted to say that both me and my mom have always supported my brother throughout the years, and we both know that if he were given the opportunity to come home, it would just strengthen that support for him. Being there for him throughout the years has helped him a lot, I know, but it also has helped us make it through. It's been very hard. I'm sorry, I don't want to get emotional. But my mom is aging gracefully, I might say. But she has been very unable to make the trip to see him as much as she has always been there for him. And it's really taken a toll on her as well as us. But we are both very confident that if he were given the opportunity to come home, that he would be not only successful, but excel incredibly in society. And we would both do everything in our power to help him with his transition and whatever else he may need from us. We have just seen him progress so well in there. And I agree with the first guy that spoke. I mean, he's just looked up to by so many other inmates. We've seen it several times. He has just so many friends in there. He's just one of the most kindest people that I know.
Ma'am, thank you so much. We appreciate the family's input. Thank you. Amy Dozier,
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
you can.
Okay. I'm here today to express my support for Chris. I've known Chris since October of 2015. I know from my friendship with Chris that he has acknowledged his mistakes and he is extremely remorseful for his participation in the crime that was committed. I also believe that he has taken the steps needed for rehabilitation. Chris has been incarcerated for over 30 years. He's taken the time to complete educational programming and other programming to be able to come before you today. He's been a model inmate. he's exhibited very good behavior as well as a friend and role model to his peers. During the time that I've known Chris, I've had many opportunities to visit with him and correspond with him. I've watched him at many of the rodeos selling his hobby craft and interacting with the public. He has conducted himself with professionalism, respect, and kindness. I truly believe that should he be given the opportunity, he will excel in anything he chooses to do. I will personally be here for Chris should that time come that he is released if he needs anything at all. My home is open to him and I will maintain consistent contact with him. He also has the support of many other extended family and friends. I'd also like to mention that Chris had just turned 19 years old when this crime happened. And while I didn't know him at the time, I don't believe that he is that same teenager. He's now a 50-year-old man. He's been incarcerated over 3 decades. Studies show that recidivism decreases with age. And I believe with all of the support that Chris has, he is a great candidate for commutation. As I've said, he has my support, he has my help, 100%. I hope you find it in your hearts today to commute his sentence and give him that opportunity.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. All right. I think that's our allotment for those speaking in support. For the record, the Parole Project is here and has committed to Mr. John Picard as a client. Is that right, Mr. Myers?
Yes, Mr. Nasi, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. We'll hear from the opposition now. Can we hear from Shirley Adams, please? Go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Shirley Adams. I'm the victim's mother, Shirley Lowers. They killed her and murdered her on December the 28th, 1991. I will never forget them days. I don't believe Christopher is ready to come out and face the world. I believe if he comes out, he's going to do the same thing. If he's doing so well in prison, keep him there. Let him see what it is. He hurt my family. He hurt me. He's put us through too much, and I can't see him getting out. So I'm asking you to please keep him in there where he belongs for the rest of his life. They stabbed her. They crushed her skull in. They took her out of her window of her car and then put on her jacket because he was cold. I can't believe that he's going to come out and be a saint. That is not going to happen. So please take it in consideration and keep him where he belongs. Thank you.
Ma'am, thank you, Ms. Adams. We appreciate your input. Rachel,
I didn't want to cry.
Hi, my name is Rachel Pickering. And this is the first time I'm ever seeing you, Christopher. And Shirley, who you're referring to as Shirley Lowers, that was my best friend. So I've known her since she was a small child. And I have a history with her, a history before you helped take her life, and a history with remembering her.
all right,
And
Ms. Rachel,
Yes.
I hate to interrupt. Would you direct your remarks to us, not to?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So what I'm hearing today, and which I've heard before, is all the great accomplishments and all the great things that have been done. She never got that chance. She never had the opportunity to have any achievements that we're all speaking about today. And I know that her death has hurt everyone. I know that. I know it's hurt the family of Christopher and Harold as well. And I realize that. And I feel for you. I feel for you. But what do you think? You know, I'm just asking today, releasing is like her life didn't matter. It's like it never mattered. And sure, 30 years, 31 years almost has passed by at this point. But it doesn't change the fact that she deserved the right to live. And when it was taken from her, it was taken from us all. We'll never know. We're talking about children being born and achievements. She didn't get that chance. She's never going to get that chance. We're talking about not being able to see a mom today. Her mother never gets to see her, and I visit her at a cemetery, a picture. That's what's left. And the only thing is, yes, Miss Shirley is getting older, but I am going to continue. I'm going to continue to oppose this for as long as I have breath in me, because I don't believe that time erases murdering someone. So I strongly oppose his release. Strongly. Thank you.
Thank you. And from the DA's office, Mr. Clark.
Good afternoon. The state is submitting its opposition in this case based on the heinous and very brutal nature of the murder, in this case, murder of a 17-year-old victim. Just to go on with Mr. Roche had said earlier regarding the stabbing, what we understand from the reports, crime scene reports, and police reports, is that 2 knives were actually used in this particular murder, that a knife was broken off in the victim, because we have the shards that were matched to a knife, and that a second knife was then found on the scene. This would tend to lend more credibility to Mr. Brand's statement as to the culpability of Mr. Picard in this case. Secondly, as far as Mr. Picard's statement about throwing the, I believe it's a concrete paver through the back window, we have his previous statement as well as the crime scene evidence showing that it was the front driver's side window and not the back driver's side window that was shattered out in this case. I think that the minimization of his role in this heinous murder, it does not lend to someone who has accepted responsibility for this crime and for this offense, and does not show proper rehabilitation in this particular matter. For that reason, and also the reasons expressed by the family of the victims, the state would oppose.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Clark. All right, then, that's everybody. Mr. Picard, before I turn it over to your attorney, Ms. Cameron, is there a statement you'd like to make?
I just want to thank the board for giving me the opportunity. And I pray that you find it in your hearts to give me a favorable recommendation.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Cameron?
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, I appreciate y'all letting me speak today. First, I'd like to start by saying that if there are any mistakes in Chris's packet, those are my own. Please do not hold those against Chris. Chris is not only a client for me, he is a friend. I've known him for 8 years. The most telling fact about who Chris is to me is the fact that my husband introduced me to him very early on. Chad does not do that unless he believes in the character of someone. What I'd like to say today is Chris has been incarcerated for 31 years for this crime. He takes full responsibility for his participation in it and what the bad decisions that he made that night. He can't take that back. There is no time that he could do that could make up for the taking of a life. He knows that. He's been very honest about that fact for as long as I've known him. And like I said, he can't change what happened. What he could change is what he did change, himself and who he was. He was a 19-year-old substance abuser and alcoholic. They were very extremely high that night. Chris, actually, some of the details of what happened are vague because of the substances that he was on. But when he decided to change his life, he did. He has taken all of the possibility, all the programs that are offered here to improve who he is. He's not only taken them, they changed his life so much that he began teaching them and facilitating them. He has taught both of the 12-step programs here. He's also taught public speaking. As far as his residence plan and his sobriety plan, I did want to address that real quickly. Because the AA meeting that we found initially that is in the packet, that is like 5 or 6 minutes from Chris's mother's house in Alexander City. We have since determined that that may have shut down, which is why I have discussed with Chris about the possibility of being a future facilitator again in that area to facilitate other people who have substance abuse issues having the access to those programs. He is planning to be released through Parole Project, as you know. We have also looked into a program much like Parole Project. It's called Shepherd's Promise, which is actually located in Birmingham, Alabama, where that closest AA meeting that Chris was speaking about earlier is located. The reason we have done that is because we are acutely aware that this board may not be appreciative of the AA meeting being an hour away and Chris's inability to possibly get there. So if this board so chooses, when we get to the point where Chris would earn parole, he is willing to be released to Shepherd's Promise as well, if y'all feel like his mother's house is too far away from those types of services. Chris lost even his own family. His child has been adopted by someone else. His ex-wife came to him after he was incarcerated. And so he feels very acutely what the loss of a child feels like, although it is in a different manner. He does acknowledge that difference. Chris has done everything he could possibly do within the penitentiary to make amends for those decisions that he made 31 years ago. And he's spoken on his community service. And we just ask this board to please judge him on who he is today, not that 19-year-old substance abuser and alcoholic 31 years ago. That is what this board is commissioned to do, is to judge who he is today and whether or not he can be a productive citizen. Much like Amy, who is also a friend of mine, I echo her sentiments. Chris will always have me as a support personally, and he will always have our law firm as well, as we intend to be a part of Chris's long-term life and integration into society. So we just humbly ask the board today to judge Chris on his accomplishments and who he is, and not that child who was making bad decisions 31 years ago. Thank you.
You. Mr. Freeman?
This is a very, very tough one. You can see from both sides, I mean, the effects that this crime has had. It was a horrific crime. Mr. Picard was 18, getting ready to be 19 when it happened. And like his attorney said, we got to look at what we have today, the man that's in front of us today. And in my mind, I think the man has changed from who he was. I think prison has done all it can do for him. I don't think, no amount of time can justify what happened. But as I said, I think prison's done everything it can for him. And my vote today is to grant and commute to 99 years with immediate parole eligibility.
Mrs. Jackson?
This big hard. This is hard. This was a terrible, terrible crime. And I think about how that young lady must have suffered, how afraid she was, terrible thing that happened. And I feel for her, feel for her family. And so this is hard.
Yes, ma'am.
But if our job is to judge not just on the crime, if that were the only thing, this would be an easy decision. But it's not. It's to look at who you are, what you've accomplished, And I think the thing that really spoke to me most is just the remark, Landon. Someone whose life is positively impacted by your influence. You're putting him ahead of your own interests. I think speaks a lot about the person. I also have to take into consideration your age at the time that this offense occurred. And while it was horrific, I can't even imagine what entered into your all's thought processes. But I know an 18-year-old and a 50-year-old are vastly different in the way they think and process the world around them. And so my vote today, likewise, would be to recommend commutation for 99 years.
Mr. Rushing?
Mr. Picard,
Yes, sir.
I agree with most of the things that my colleague said today. I agree with your attorney that this board is commissioned to look at the person you are today. We also have a responsibility, and it's stated in the vision of this board that we must keep the victim as a part of this process.
Yes, sir.
The mother of the victim has appeared today. She is still emotionally, mentally, and physically affected by the death of her daughter. The district attorney has made a statement that the statement I read is most likely true. The knife did break off into the victim, and there was a second knife at the scene of the crime. I don't think you are fully truthful with us today. And because of adamant opposition of the victim's family, strong opposition from the DA, in which this was tried in a premeditated, and it was premeditated. You had a choice, and you took a life based on all that information that I have to deny your request today.
Thank you, Mr. Rushing. Mr. Mirabella?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. There is just no question that this was a horrible crime. And if my vote to deny you today would bring back that young woman, I would do it in a second. We don't have that power. We don't have that authority. Our responsibility is to look at the facts and to hear the video, not hear the pain, not hear the grief that the mother is in. No question. But as I look at what you've accomplished and who you are today, as Judge Jackson has pointed out, you were 18 years old at the time. You're a 50-year-old man. Done a lot of very positive things while you've been in prison. I agree. Mr. Landon's testimony was very powerful. My vote likewise would be to recommend to the governor that he commute your sentence to 99 years.
All right, Mr. Picard. This is terrible. I reviewed the case. I just feel terrible crime. I just was really struck by the violent nature of the crime. And talking to you today and hearing what the warden had to say about you, looking at your prison record, I do concur with my colleagues. My vote today would be to vote to commute your sentence. to 99 years with parole eligibility, and that is the recommendation of my committee.
Thank you.
Good luck
Thank
to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, all board members.
Gordon Falvey, that concludes our business at your facility. We'll recess. It's 12:49. Thanks for accommodating us today.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Have we all gone mad? Is it just me that's like really pissed off right now? I'm sorry, Rachel. What I'm pissed off about, Mr. Roche says it best. I know he can sometimes frustrate us, but man, he can at least be on point. The dude lied. I mean, when he started off with this whole story, I thought that Mr. Marabella was going to tear into him, but it was like, whatever. What kind of programs are you doing? And I'm like, what? Programs? This guy just made up this totally absurd story, and you're talking about programs? By the way, anyone, if you're wondering who his attorney is, who is holding his victim's hand in a really creepy way, we have a case. I'll drop the link down below. When she mentions Chad, my husband, introduced me to him. We have a case with Chad, her husband. He also stabbed a man to death, by the way. So I love that she's referring to her convicted murder felon husband as a great reference for this man. That's really, really something I can use as a great reference for why Christopher is a great guy, because he doesn't normally introduce me to great guys, you know. Just saying. Yeah, you can't make it up. You can't make it up. I'd be okay with it if he was honest. I think I would be. I know many of you are watching. No way, you bury under the prison. But the bottom line is our system is meant to rehabilitate. It is meant to punish. And if it does both, then people, I think, should have a right to gain freedom. But in this case, he was just lying and dragging and really it starts with, well, I was in the house and I wanted to have a threesome and I asked my buddy. And then, I don't know, they looked upset. So then she went in the car and I threw a rock through the window, but in the back because I didn't want to hurt her. And then my buddy dragged her out and then stabbed her and then dropped a brick on her head, then gave me the brick and said I had to drop it. And I intentionally missed, but then I dropped it on her head. And it's like, what? It was so obviously a lie. The whole thing was so ridiculous. How do you reward someone like this with freedom? You can't. But they just did. I don't get it. Everything goes out the window when you come up here and you can't own up to it. I don't get it. I don't. I don't know, like, why Carrie Myers would want to support someone like, you know, who maybe Carrie Myers didn't know that he would have just come up here and make up this whole random story. We know from the evidence that that's not how it happened. He just got in front of the board and lied. No, he threw a rock. Can you imagine the terror of being a 17-year-old girl and having your car, she's probably trying to drive away. They smash through her window, drag her out, stab her. The knife breaks, they go and get another one. And then they crush her skull in. It's out of a horror movie. It's out of your worst nightmares. And then he gets up here and lies about it. And everyone but Mr. Roche and the prosecutor and the victims, they take it hook, line, and sinker. I don't know. Who cares that he's been honest for all these years? And who cares that there's a story where he recommended someone else? I'm sure there was a reason behind it. Stuff like this pisses me off. Not as bad as the cockroaches piss me off, but it's more about the injustice that I see here. If you can't admit what you've done and own up to it, not to mention the whole thing, he doesn't have a relationship with his son. And I don't know if the stairs are real either. A lot of red flags for me. A lot of red flags. That prosecutor, Brian Clark, we saw one situation where the board and him really bumped heads. I think Miss Jackson insulted him about his appreciation of Vietnam War veterans. He gets pretty upset in that one. I can drop the link for that too. Shaking my head. Sometimes you feel like you're living in an alternate universe. That's what I feel like right now. Admit it. I'd be okay with it. You can't admit it. You're gonna make up a story. Tell me I'm crazy, people. Community. Man, do community. Tell me what you think. Tell me if I'm losing it. Love to hear your comments down below, and do the algorithm thing. I found out from data, man, it really helps. So anything you can do to help people see this, be appreciated. Thank you.